am narrating the tragic story of Lauren Giddings. Forensic health professionals consider 4 essential items when evaluating stalking: the nature of the relationship between the stalker and victim, the stalker's motivations, and the psychological and social realities of both the stalker and the victim. Our subject is 25-year-old Stephen McDaniel. To understand the psychological components behind his actions, we delve into his digital footprint. Technology has made forensic investigations considerably more efficient, allowing 2 key items on our list to be examined through a single component: the Internet, specifically Internet search history. The disclosure of web browser data is often crucial evidence, as it can unveil aspects of a suspect's personality that would otherwise remain hidden. A large majority of Stephen's online activity involved pornography with themes of violence and torture. He also conducted numerous searches on how to commit sexual assault, using variations of phrases like "how to molest sleeping girl." For forensics, this indicates an overt sign of desensitization to sexual activity. Excessive exposure to online pornography can build a tolerance to traditional sexual concepts, driving individuals to seek more potent forms of stimuli. For Stephen McDaniel, this began with abstract material on the internet and eventually led him to planning and then carrying out what he saw on screen. His target was 24-year-old Lauren Giddings, his next-door neighbor of 3 years. Lauren essentially had no social vulnerabilities. She was outgoing, popular, and well-liked within her community, with a strong social support system. However, in terms of psychological vulnerabilities, the term perceptual naivety comes to light. Stephen had asked Lauren out within 6 months of their acquaintance, reportedly only the second time they had spoken. Lauren politely declined, suggesting they remain friends. She later confided in her actual friends that Stephen made her feel extremely uneasy and she was uncomfortable around him. She also started getting an eerie vibe that someone had been inside her apartment, especially late at night, and considered moving multiple times. The reality was that Stephen McDaniel had stolen a master key from a security guard and repeatedly let himself into her apartment to look around. He also began filming her when she left and returned. Her instincts were tragically accurate. On June 25, 2011, at 9:34 p.m. and again at 10:47 p.m., just hours before the murder, Stephen recorded Lauren's bedroom. He then snuck into her apartment once more. This time, she was sleeping. As he crept into her bedroom, she awoke and panicked. Stephen pounced on her and proceeded to strangle her for roughly 15 minutes. Lauren fought courageously, clawing at his face and chest, but was eventually overpowered and died of asphyxiation. After the murder, Stephen dismembered Lauren's body in the bathtub with a hacksaw, cutting her into 5 pieces. He placed each piece in a trash bag and disposed of them in separate trash cans around campus. 3 days later, Lauren's concerned friends arrived at her apartment, letting themselves in with a spare key. All her belongings were still inside, including her cell phone, driver's license, and passport. A missing persons report was filed that night. The next morning, a search party commenced, and police discovered the victim's torso at 9:40 a.m., placed in a trash can next to the apartment complex. The rest of her remains were never recovered. The investigation was then switched from a missing person to murder. Police canvassed the surrounding area, conducting interviews with neighbors and classmates, including Stephen McDaniel. He was first interviewed by local news, seemingly unaware that part of the victim's remains had been discovered. He expressed concern, stating, "We are just trying to find out where she is at this point. No one has seen her since Saturday. No one's heard from her since." When asked about enemies, he replied, "No, we just don't know where she is." He became distressed and asked to sit down. This was a genuine reaction disguised as another. He was likely feeling fear and shock that evidence had been discovered, but feigned sorrow over his supposed friend's loss. He was interviewed by police at 11:50 a.m., offering to help, but came across as fidgety and apprehensive. There were 2 highlighted moments. First, when Stephen asserted he was a virgin saving himself for marriage, and second, when the detective discovered scratch marks on his face and stomach, which Stephen claimed he inflicted on himself in his sleep. He at that point unknowingly became the prime suspect and was asked if police could search his apartment. Stephen reluctantly accepted and was transported back to the complex. While searching his apartment, investigators discovered a collection of swords, guns, toilet rolls, stockpiled provisions as if preparing for an apocalyptic event, and a mask made of women's underwear. The most significant discovery, however, was a pack of condoms. When asked why he would have such an item if he was celibate, he miraculously confessed to stealing them from another apartment. This gave the detectives probable cause for arrest, and Stephen was handcuffed and brought to the police station. His interrogation began just after 11 p.m. on June 30th, 2011. The detective, adopting an aggressive approach, sat very close, demanding eye contact. Stephen's response was a monotone dialogue and lifeless demeanor, mystifying yet impressive. When asked about Lauren, he simply replied Lauren Giddings, confirming she lived next door but claiming he hadn't seen her in weeks. He maintained they were good friends. The detective's efforts to increase psychological pressure by closing distance and demanding eye contact were met with Stephen turning his head and fixing his gaze, unnerving the detective. A second detective entered the room, employing a similar aggressive strategy. He directly accused Stephen of knowing about Lauren's disappearance and her body being found. Stephen remained stoic, repeatedly stating, "I don't know." The detective then shifted to a sympathetic and understanding tone, offering Stephen a more socially acceptable reason for the crime, suggesting he was pinged and got out of control. Stephen still denied everything. The detective then moved to a futility technique, implying they already knew the truth, saying, "There's blood in your apartment, Stephen. You didn't get it all up." This was a bluff, as the dismemberment happened in Lauren's apartment, not Stephen's. Stephen's hair was found in Lauren's apartment. Finally, the detectives had an opportunity to present irrefutable evidence. Hundreds of pictures of Lauren were discovered on Stephen's flash drive, along with multiple video recordings of the inside of her apartment. A hacksaw with Lauren's blood was found in a supply closet of the apartment complex, and the packaging for the exact same hacksaw was found in Stephen's apartment. When confronted with this overwhelming evidence, Stephen took a plea deal to avoid the death penalty. He was rendered a life sentence without the possibility of parole and is currently being held at the high-security Hancock State Prison in Sparta, Georgia.